Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you a few mass market decks that are really still in my heart lately. So as far as collections go for Tarot and Oracle decks, I know that mine is fairly large. I know that there's a few people that have many more Tarot and Oracle decks than I do. But I know that generally speaking, if we look at the average, then I probably have a large collection. I have over 500 decks. I have never felt like it was overwhelming. When it comes to overwhelm, it's mostly referred to space, so to logistics, rather than the sheer number of decks that I've got. I just want to remind everyone that I have started collecting 37 years ago. So obviously all of the decks have accumulated in all of these decades. And I've always felt up until now, and I hope that it will continue for the future, that this is actually bringing me joy. It's one of the things that I look forward to. I look forward to new decks. I have continuous wish lists. I add decks on a wish list. Then when I finally see a deck owned by somebody else, I may look at the walkthrough and I realize that it's not for me, and so I will remove it from the wish list. And sometimes I would just buy a deck and decide that it's not for me, and then I rehome it. Some other times I will change my mind and I'll keep the deck. I never felt like I was doing something wrong. I never felt like it was kind of affecting me. What I recommend, and I talk about it in many videos, when you have a collection, whether it's Tarot and Oracle decks or fountain pens or scarves or rings, just make sure you do it for yourself. Just make sure that you feel happy when you think about it, because the moment in which you stop feeling happy and you start feeling anxious, that's the moment in which, well, to me, that's a telltale sign that perhaps there's something that doesn't really work any longer for you. For me, that moment has not come. I'm not forcing myself to foreboding this moment. I don't want to push it away if it comes. As I said, I'm always very comfortable. And so what happens is that I keep on buying decks. And if you watched my latest videos, you would have seen that both in the month of February, because of my birthday, and in the month of March, because of the Tarot conference in Western Australia and the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival in Sydney, I have acquired a lot of decks. Naturally, that will feel like for the month of April, I am not necessarily looking to buy any more decks. But I'm not stopping myself from doing it, so I'm always keeping an eye out for anything that comes out. But that also means that sometimes I leave some decks behind. I hope it makes sense, not because I want to, but because there's always a new deck and I'm filming a video where I do the unboxing and I give you my first impressions, and then I probably set the deck aside, and then there's another deck that comes after that one, and for one reason or another I don't really have enough time to focus on my purchases after the first impressions. So I have started this year, better late than never, I've started revisiting the concept of a deck lineup. So there's a number of tarot readers and collectors that will have a deck's lineup for a specific week or a specific month or a specific work that they're doing on themselves. It doesn't really matter, but obviously it assumes that we know all of the decks in our collection, we know the use that we have for these decks, and then we set them aside for a particular use. So I have revisited that concept, and I took it upon myself to give a chance to all of the decks that have come recently into my collection to be appreciated and not just looked at for one time in which I'm filming the video and then setting them aside and then perhaps being picked up after 6 months. So what I'm doing now, I'm actually going through all of the decks that I recently bought, and I decide immediately whether they resonate with me or not. And in order to do so, I actually work with them. I read with them. I use them in tarot and oracle decks pairings. I talk about that with my members. There's a number of things that are part of my practice. And as a result of that, and I apologize already for the really super duper long introduction, but as a result of that, I have come to really appreciate some decks that perhaps at my first impression were not really still in my heart, but they are right now. So these are the decks that I'm going to talk about today. So I just want to start with this deck because I've talked about this deck a couple of times already in my latest videos. I believe also in my last videos, because it is related to a really deep work that I'm doing these days. This is the Crystal Grid Oracle. This is the deluxe edition published by Rockpool, created by Nicola McIntosh. And I'm not going to go much deeper because I've already talked about this deck a number of times. And the reason why I talked about this deck is because I have renewed my partnership with Otto Spirit. So just for you to know, if you still want to purchase any jewelry item from their website, you can do so by using my promotional code Silvia20, and that will give you a 20% discount. So I highly recommend using it. And when it comes to the Crystal Grid Oracle Deluxe Edition, what I decided to do, and it's a bit of an experiment, but I'm just going to show you. With my members, we have a recurring weekly video that is called Energies of the Week, where I use one oracle deck and I basically pull one card from each and every zodiac group of signs. So for the air signs, the water signs, the earth signs, and the whatever element that is left. And when it comes to a new month, when there's a new month coming, I change deck. Now, obviously, we're in April now. And so I have decided to do a little bit of an experiment because I'm going to use this deck, the Crystal Grid Oracle, because I really like the exercises that you can find for each and every one of these cards. And so what I'm going to do, I'm basically going to show you very quickly now. I just literally shuffle the deck, and let's do it just quickly. So I shuffle the deck and then I just pull one card for each and every group of signs. So this one, let's say this is going to be for the fire signs. So let me just zoom in because obviously we want to see the cards a bit better at least. So I pulled this card, let's say for the fire signs, for the Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. And this card is the card number 67. It's called Optimism, which is an excellent card to draw when you're looking at the energies for 1 week, right? So, and Kevensite. So this is the reference. We've got Optimism as a keyword, Kevensite as the reference stone or crystal that is used in this particular crystal grid. And then I go to the guidebook and I go to number 67, and then I read, let's say, the energies, or not really, they're not laid out as energies, but I do read them as energies. So I talk about optimism, joy and transition, Kevensite and quartz. And then he talks about the Kevensite is a rare small stone usually found as little rosettes on a bed of other minerals, and so on and so forth. But what I was referring to is the exercise part. So basically, because I pulled this card for the fire signs this particular week, I gave the possibility to the fire signs to do this exercise. So is there something you wish for or something you need to be optimistic about? This card is about joy and transition. If you cannot sense optimism, be gentle with yourself as you go through the transition and call on Kevensite to help you be optimistic. Even if what you opt for doesn't come, know that something awaits you at the end that you might not be able to see right now. This is a really beautiful exercise. So basically, I invite the fire signs to possibly meditate or journal or engage in some kind of activity that will be conducive of this kind of optimism. So I literally read out loud the exercise and I connect it with the keyword that is proposed by the card. So this is what we're doing, or we will start doing, from next week, obviously, because last week was still March. And so we're going to use this deck, and I have come to really like it, because it's not just a matter of aesthetics, and honestly these are the type of aesthetic that I actually appreciate, but it's also because it gives you so much more to focus on, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to be used in a very personal way. So it may be an excellent tool for your personal growth. You can use it as much or as little as you want, and to be honest with you, sometimes what I always say to my members, because we do a lot of rituals in my membership, and depending on the level, but starting from the sunlight and the starlight, obviously we have a lot of rituals that we go through, whether it's meditation, guided meditation, rituals with candles, with water, for personal growth, for release. We connected with the major arcanas, for example. For the Starlight members, we're doing each and every month, we're looking at a specific major arcana, and we're talking about the keywords that are associated with that. And I propose a number of tarot and oracle decks, but even movies, fiction and non-fiction books, songs, and we do some rituals. So what I was saying is, I always make clear to everyone when I propose a ritual that I am going to talk about the crystal, okay? This crystal in specific, pyrite. Or I'm going to talk about candles, or I'm going to talk about essential oils, or I'm going to talk about a number of things. And I always make sure to clarify that no one needs to buy anything. And that is something very important for me. I would never feel like pushing people to buy something, but I always give an alternative. If you don't have a candle, use a lamp. There's a number of things that you can use as substitutes. But this is a very engaging kind of deck, and when you look at these cards, you don't have to buy the crystals. That's what I meant. Because imagine if you had to buy all of these crystals, that would set you back thousands and thousands of dollars, literally. But when you have this deck, you have the knowledge and the access to these crystals at your hands, at your fingertips, without, breaking the bank. So that is one of the reasons why I will never stop talking in a very positive way about this deck. And I am very excited to start this practice with my members starting from next week. It's going to be really fun. But then let's move on to another couple of decks that I am studying right now, and I started using them because it is also related to something that I'm doing with my members. So with my members, we're doing a deck study. Every more or less 3 months we change deck, and currently we are almost finished with the deck study of the Light Seers Tarot by Cries and Donnelly. It's really fun. It's lots and lots of fun. I honestly have been using the Light Seers Tarot ever since it's been published, and even I, with all the times that I've been using that deck, I was not aware of all of the symbols that you find on the cards, and that really blew my mind. So that's been really fun. But I'm already trying and find alternatives for the next deck that we're going to study. And one of the decks that we proposed a number of times is something related to fairy tales. And so I'm actually looking through these two decks right now. Let me just zoom out for a second. And you probably recognize this deck. It's just that this is the Spanish edition. So this is the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt. But I got this deck when the English edition was still out of print, super duper expensive, and I really didn't feel like spending $300-400 on it. And then I found someone that was selling this Spanish edition for a very reasonable price with the larger book, which is this one here, and so I just had to have it. And I have to say, Spanish is actually closer to my native language than English, so I'm actually taking a break. So whenever I go through this deck and I go through the guidebook and I read the stories, or rather the fairy tales, it feels like I'm almost reading in Italian, which is my native language, so it's kind of fun. But anyway, so this is one of the options of the decks that we're going to consider for the next deck study. And because this deck now, or at least the English edition, has come back, as being reprinted by US Games, and it's obviously mass market, being US Games, and it's rather affordable, at least in here in Australia. I don't think it's been released yet, or if it has, because US Games takes about 3 to 6 months to release decks in Australia, and they never really make them available unless you buy them from Amazon US. So I need to double check that. But because I have the Spanish edition, I don't honestly feel like I need to buy the English one, but I believe that it is very affordable, around probably 35 to 40 Australian dollars, which is, as you can imagine, an excellent price. Also considering that it used to sell for $300-400. So this is, I'm expecting not much different, the edition that I have from the latest English edition from US Games. And I am really looking forward to dive deeper into this deck. Obviously, we still haven't voted yet, so if you want to join my membership, we will love to welcome you. And we're going to take a vote probably next week, to determine which deck will be the next one that we're going to study. But this one will be a fantastic deck to study, and generally speaking, I believe that any Fairytale deck will be so, because obviously it gives you so much more additional material that you can dig deeper inside, and it's relating back to tarot in a very unique way. And I also believe that my experience is mostly related to the Ghosts and Spirit Tarot, also by Lisa Hunt. I haven't truly studied this one yet, but if it's anything like the Ghosts and Spirit, I believe that it really is exciting, because if there's a story that you don't really like, there might be the next story related to the next tarot card that you might like. So there's a little bit of interesting stories or fairy tales for everyone, I think. And there's also the fact that when we're looking at these cards without knowing what the fairy tale behind it is, we may not entirely make the connection with the tarot card. I hope I'm explaining myself, but basically sometimes, let's see, for example, this is the Essential to the Bastos, and this is obviously the Six of Wands, so it tells me about victory, it tells me about triumph, it tells me about being crowned the winner, just reaching your goal and being also celebrated by the community for what you've done. There's always, what I like to say about this card is that there's always a small caveat, a small warning to just enjoy the moment. Yeah, of course you won, so yeah, go for it, but never forget that you actually were able to win thanks to the help of your team, because if you start forgetting that, the next step in a sequence will be that your team eventually will turn against you, and you'll find yourself in a Seven of Wands situation where you're so surprised because everyone is now against you. You're like, hang on a second, you were celebrating me up until last night, and what is going on now? And everyone is against me, and you have to stand for what you believe in, but against other people. That's because you forgot to acknowledge them, or to include them, or to give credit to them. That is my let's say sequential way of interpreting the Six and the Seven of Wands. But by being honest with you, I may say that I don't necessarily know what's going on in this card. I see that there's a dragon, and I see that there is a warrior, let's say, and I see that this warrior is trying to tame the dragon. And there's also what looks like a goddess or a deity of some sort that is witnessing the scene and hoping probably for the warrior, the fighter, to tame the dragon. I don't really know. So I will have to go to the guidebook and have a look at what this legend is, or what this fairy tale is, because yes, it points to victory, but does that really add onto the idea that I have already about the Six of Wands? It will, the moment in which I will find out what this is in reference to. So the Six of Wands, and I got the Eight of Wands here, and the Seven of Wands, and this is the Six of Wands. So the Prince and the Dragon, and so it tells you the name of the fairy tale, the Prince and the Dragon. Then it says cultura, as in cultural background, I would say Serbia. Palabras clave, so keywords, victoria, victory, éxito is winning, let's say, getting it done, and triunfo is triumph. So obviously it definitely resonates with the way in which I read the Six of Wands, and everyone else does. But it is always interesting to read the story, or at least the, let's say, shorter version of the story about this fairy tale in order to understand it and relate to everything. So symbolos and significado, so symbols and meaning. Dragons are creatures that, among others, they keep the mission to try to challenge the will of human beings. So the kid, so this is just a kid, and muchacho is just a kid, it's not even a warrior or anything, has seen a red tunic, which is the symbol of, so has been wearing a red tunic, which is the symbol of power, luxury and passion. And then it goes on, obviously, it talks about the fact that it's got some, these looks like arrows or even wands, and that's the reference to the Six of Wands, and they are in, he's holding that obviously, and that is referring to hunting. And then it talks about this is a lake, and there's a little bit of fog that is obscuring the lake. And that is referring to the impossibility of the thoughts from the subconscious mind to interfere with the determination of the conscious mind. Wow, so you see what I mean? That is the reason why this deck is still in my heart, because it is so much deeper than I would have thought at a first glance. And I believe that only when you truly invest time in looking at these decks, that's when you really can appreciate them or not. I mean, obviously, when it comes to, this is the star card, it's probably one of my favorite star cards of all times. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But it is when I start understanding what the reason behind the choice for that specific fairy tale is, that I will be, on the same page as Lisa Hunt. I will understand her motivation and intention. I will appreciate it, or sometimes I will also disagree, because let's give us room enough to be in our own mind. This is, I'm thinking this is the emperor that is not wearing any clothes. So the emperor's new dress or something like that, the emperor's new clothes. Number 16 is the tower, but it has been renamed El Engaño, and I don't know what it's been named in English, but this is the trick, basically, being tricked into something. So it's obviously, it brings about feelings of being betrayed, but mostly being tricked. So it would be very interesting to study this card as well, and all of the other cards, honestly. This looks like an incredibly deep deck to me, but as I said, I really want to study this, because that is the only way in which I will be able to understand if I truly like it or not, and if it resonates or not. And because we're talking about fairy tales, and it's basically, it feels like every year there is a different theme that is, very important in the tarot world. I don't know if you have the same impression, but I remember a couple of years ago, it was a very botanical kind of year. We had a lot of mushroom decks, mushroom tarot, mushroom oracle, all sorts of mushroom related art style and everything. And last year was the year of collages, and it's still overlapping into this year, but it feels like this year is really booming the theme of fairy tales. And so there's been this reprint, and then there's other decks, and one that has been recently published by Los Carabeo is this one, which is by Kate Forsyth's Fairytale Oracle. This one is being illustrated by Merle Hunt, and it's, as I said, a Rockpool production. It is one of those deluxe production by Rockpool. But I have to say, it feels actually a lot better than all of the other decks, because this one has a very soft linen finish, and I actually really like it. The box is very nice as well. But what I wanted to point out is that this one is the Fairytale Oracle, and it's got a really interesting structure, in the sense that you would imagine that each and every card would be pointing to a different story tale, or fairy tale, but it's not the case. So they're actually grouped, and I believe there's 4 cards for each and every one of them, yes. And they're grouped in fairy tales. So we've got Rapunzel, for example, and the first 4 cards are related to Rapunzel. And you will see that thanks to these 4 cards, I wouldn't know whether it's Rapunzel the most common or the most popular fairy tale. I know that it's not in Italy. In Italy, or at least in my time, I would say that Sleeping Beauty is definitely one of the most popular ones and well known. And also Snow White is probably very well known. But we got, and Cinderella. We got Sleeping Beauty here and Cinderella. So Cinderella has been also adapted in a lot of TV shows and movies, especially by Disney, of course, and also other movies. And so what I would point out is that by looking at these 4 cards, you will see 4 key points of the fairy tale. And if you go through these 4 key points, you will understand the character arc of the protagonist in the fairy tale. And that helps also understanding how to use this deck. So let me show you. For example, Cinderella at the beginning, we all know the story, so I'm not going to repeat it. Obviously, she was bullied by her sisters and she was pushed to do all these chores, but she was the truly beautiful one and beautiful inside as well. And then at a certain point, thanks to magic, she gets to go to a ball where she meets a really gorgeous and lovely prince. But she had been told you have to be back by midnight or before midnight, because otherwise you will just turn back into your old usual self. And she has to run, but while she is running, she loses a shoe, and the prince obviously finds the shoe, and he is just literally going everywhere to find the girl that was matching, that was wearing the other shoe. Now, I did say that I was not going to talk about the fairy tale because we all know it, and I ended up telling you anyway. Apologies for that. But in any case, the important thing is this, that we notice that at the beginning it's rags and ashes, so injustice. So this is pointing to the beginning, the prison that she finds herself in, and the way that she has to dream about being free, the way that she has to dream about a better future. And but at the same time, we also understand that this kind of injustice is something that is, let's say, portraying the world around us. So there's a lot of political and social commentary to all of fairy tales, by the way. So we can relate a lot to our own position. And then looking at, for example, the fairy godmother. So that is a turning point in the story, because Cinderella finally meets the fairy godmother, who decides to help her. And by helping her, she gives her assistance. So obviously we start with injustice, we go through assistance. Time flies, so when she goes to the ball, she meets the prince, she falls in love with the prince, but she knows that she has to run back or disappear, let's say, because otherwise at midnight she will turn back into, wearing what she was wearing at the beginning, rags and ashes. But what we understand is that there's already been a character arc here. There's already been a change in Cinderella as well. Once she's accepted the fairy godmother's assistance, she has become something more inside of herself. And so the beauty of the story is that she doesn't necessarily need the shoes or magic to be her true shiny self. And we kind of understand that. So the glass slipper, when the prince finally finds her and he tries on the glass slipper onto her feet and they match, then there is recognition. So there is, I don't know if it's clear, but this is a very beautiful character arc. So we go from a prison and that is the hero story. They find themselves in the prison. The prison is no longer a valid condition of life for them, and they want to move on and escape the prison, but they need help. They encounter help, they go for it, but then obviously they almost lose everything they've got. And then they, let's say they find out that the true self is the true beauty, and they are recognized by doing so. So this is, I believe, a really beautiful oracle deck. There's a couple of things that I personally don't really like, especially there's a couple of things in the guidebook that just don't resonate with me, and I wish they were slightly different. When it says dark face and bright face, I was promising people to do a deeper search on this. I honestly haven't had the time, but I really believe that instead of saying dark face and bright face, we could definitely say dark side and bright side. We say dark side all the time in tarot. We talk about dark side and bright side of things, and dark and shadow work and light and bright work. So I will just read it this way because that's what resonates most for me. And it is really beautiful to go through all of these cards. Obviously, I had to get acquainted to one or two of these fairy tales which I did not remember, probably because I didn't know or I was not told back at the time. And so it's been really fun. When we pair up this oracle deck with the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt, and particularly looking at the stories that are behind the cards, it will be a really, really interesting exercise. At the end, we got the Beauty and the Beast, the Little Mermaid, of course, and then we got Bluebeard, which is really cool. And then we got Hansel and Gretel, of course. There's a number of stories that are resonating, I'm sure, for everyone, because these are the ones that are most famous, more popular. Even though, as I said, probably the Wild Swan is the one that I don't necessarily know. Snow White is super duper famous, super popular, so I definitely think that it would be really interesting to dive deeper into this deck. And so this is what I'm going to propose to my members. Obviously we need to vote on it, but we could pair up the studying of the Fairytale Tarot by Lisa Hunt together with Kate Forsyth's Fairytale Oracle, or any other fairy tale themed tarot and oracle deck. That would be so much fun. And then something else that I wanted to show you today, because it is a deck that I believe is so underrated, but I personally think it's fantastic. This is the Before Tarot. So with my Starlight members, we're doing, this month is the month of April, so we're focusing on the Hierophant and the necessity for the Hierophant to keep on learning, to embrace a continuous learning in order for their teaching not to become obsolete and therefore dogmatic. So it's a whole thing that we're doing with my Starlight members. And one of the decks that I recommended for this quest, the Hierophant's quest, is the Before Tarot. Now, if you have this deck and your edition looks slightly different, it's because this is the edition that I got out of the Total Tarot magazine, which is a publication that is, I believe, still going on in the UK and Australia. After a year, I actually cancelled my subscription simply because I had lost a few numbers and it was difficult to get in touch with the customer service. And so it wasn't their fault. I moved and then I communicated my new address, but I never received the new issues, so I had to just cancel the membership. But these are not, I mean, these have been licensed by Los Carabel to Total Tarot magazine, so it's completely legit. It is, I believe, a slightly different card stock, but I don't find anything wrong with this card, so it's quite okay, let's put it this way. So this one is, the concept behind this deck is, imagine if tarot were, let's say, a photo shoot or a film set. And imagine what would happen if you painted in these cards what was happening on the scene just before the director yells action. So just before the photographer takes the snapshot, or the director starts filming. So obviously you will see actors getting ready, maybe rehearsing their lines. Maybe you will still see people from the lighting, for example, working, or someone still just putting on their makeup, or you will see the prop master, you know, just arranging all the objects in the scene just to make them, I don't know, just to put them down in a proper way. And this is literally a deck that loops into that and produces a deck out of that. And this is incredibly useful because it can give you a very much deeper or at least different idea on how to view these cards. And you guys know me, for me, the most important thing when considering if I resonate with a deck or not is to understand if it gives me an additional layer of interpretation to the cards. Because after so many years, there's not a lot that surprises me, which is kind of sad. So obviously I am even more grateful to a deck when it does surprise me. And for example, with the Five of Wands in here, instead of seeing everyone fighting against each other, you see that originally the fight was between two of the members, and then the others came by to help them out. So you can build something on that. There's a lot that can be said about this deck, and I honestly really like the way in which it shows things. So the Nine of Wands, for example, shows you the person before being injured, they actually had a fight with a wolf. So you can imagine the number of ways in which you can read now tarot when you decide to focus on the moment before this happened. So the World card is fantastic, and it shows you that this is not just one person that is in the World card, it's actually two. And so it makes you think that maybe it is the same protagonist in the Lovers card, and then they're still together. And that's the World card, but this is just before the action, yelled by the director. And so what happens here is that we need to start alone our life circle or a cycle, maybe by ourselves. So maybe there's a lot to think about that. So really enjoying this. Even the Nine of Cups, for example, we are so used to think of the Nine of Cups as a person who's enjoying this wish come true, but not entirely, because they are by themselves. And we see here there's actually kids, and so he's actually pouring the wine or the liquid or whatever that is on the cups on the table, but there's actually kids around that. So maybe he's not that alone after all, and maybe they're just, at the moment, the kids are not there, but they are behind the table and they're just hiding. So there's a number of things that I really like. Look at this Ten of Cups, for example. Isn't it just absolutely magnificent? I love the fact that it's raining, because the usual Ten of Cups shows you the rainbow. And so this is the before, and it tells you, look, yeah, it's fantastic to see a rainbow, but just don't forget that before any rainbow, there has been some rain. I love this concept. I really love this concept, and I really believe that this is a deck that is surprising for me, but it's also surprising in a good way. So I've actually proposed this deck to my Starlight members in the Hierophant's Quest, because it is pointing to how much we need to learn in order to be able to always evolve with the time in whatever it is that we're teaching. Now, another thing that I want to point out, and it's another deck that is still in my heart this month, is this one. This is the Kitchen Witch Oracle by Jenna della Grottaglia. This is also a rock pool deck, and I believe that it might be available now or in the next few days. And this is, let's say, one of those decks that I really love, but I've come to really like, not because of the cards. And it's not that I don't like the cards, because I do. I mean, we know Jenna's style. I have a few of her decks and I like them all. Perhaps not all of her decks are, to my taste, but the ones that I kept are, obviously. And I would say that this one definitely is one deck that I will keep. However, if it was just because of the cards, I would not like these really large borders. I do understand in a way that they needed a larger border, because at the bottom you can see here all of these sentences that are helping you to understand the card a little bit more. But I honestly don't. So I, generally speaking, I don't hate all of the borders, but I don't appreciate obtrusive borders, and these feels like they are. But the reason why I would never rehome this deck is because of the guidebook. This is just absolutely amazing. The recipes that are here, the rituals behind. This is based, let's say, this is what I will be basing a lot of the rituals that I'm proposing to my members on, because these rituals and let's say the recipes associated to them are really, really quirky at times. They're really interesting. And they lay the base for a lot of work that is not just looking at your cards, not just reading for divination for yourself, but also actually actively taking part into the spirit of the deck and the spirit of the creator. So the memory simmer pot, for example, and then it gives you all of the ingredients and the instructions, and it tells you that in the whispers of the ancient trees, let my memory be as clear as the bubbling streams grounded in the wisdom of the earth. We all need a memory spell, to be honest. I always love to think of myself that I have a really good memory, but it's never enough. I would want to remember everything that I read, and that is just not possible. Peace and soul alignment. This is really beautiful. For example, I align with the mysteries of life, placing trust in their profound wisdom as they unlock the doors to my soul's evolution and transformation. And it gives you this ingredients and rituals. So this one is basically cilantro or coriander, depending on where you live. Cinnamon, fresh coffee grounds, dill, outer garlic peel, peppermint essential oil, tea tree oil to accelerate, olive or almond oil, one small white candle, and then it gives you the instruction for preparing this spell. And let me tell you, this is very conducive of a lot of meditation as well, a lot of journaling as well, and it really gives you the idea on how to put your collection into practice, if that makes sense. So it's not just about owning a deck, but it's also about using it. And I feel that sometimes that is a bit of a risk when you have a large collection, that you just, as I was saying at the beginning of the video, this has been a very strong intention in my 2025 New Year's intention, because I talked to myself and I said, it really doesn't make sense to acquire so many decks and not remembering them. So I need to spend time with them, and I need to decide whether I want to keep them or not, and I need to decide whether they resonate or not. And that has brought about a lot of joy, because seriously, by knowing these decks a bit better, I feel like I have a treasure, and it makes me even happier than I would have been had I not known what they brought to the table, what new experiences they can suggest for my practice. And this is absolutely what I love about a deck. So really like this deck. Absolutely recommend it. As always, it is a rock ball deck, so it's not super expensive. It's a mass market deck. Then I have another couple of decks that I'm working with, and let me just zoom out a bit. And these ones are actually, let's say, a bit of a mix, in the sense that there's two mass market and one indie. This one is very recent, Odonovan's Feminine Myths. And this one is from a year and a half ago. This is the Soul Mirror Oracle by Sunshine Connolly, but the artwork is by the same author, by Odonovan, and she's a Brazilian artist. And so I believe that these two together, I had an idea on using these two together, but I didn't necessarily know which tarot deck to combine them with. And so when I saw the solar logos, I've acquired it on Etsy, and I just absolutely love it, and I love the way these 3 decks pair up with each other. And so this is something that I really, let's say, I've come to love just recently, because I didn't know that they would have paired up so nicely together. So let me just show you. Okay, so I quickly set up the cards. So basically this is the Solar Logos Tarot. As I said, an indie deck, and you can find on Etsy. I believe it's still available. And then this is the Soul Mirror Oracle by Sunshine Connolly and Anna Novaes. And this is the Feminine Myths. Both the Soul Mirror and the Feminine Myth are published by Blue Angel. And as I said, it's the same artist, so the artwork is very recognizable. So the reason why I'm pairing this up this way, with this kind of layout and structure, is basically because the Soul Mirror Oracle is one of those oracles that has 2 keywords for each and every card, and one is referring to a shadow side and one is referring to a light side. And so basically what I'm doing is this kind of exercise. I look at the card, I look at the keyword, I look at one referring to the shadow side and one referring to the bright side, and I look at the reference on this side, so the cards on this side and the cards on that side. So this one has knowledge, for example, with the shadow side being ignorance. So obviously when referring to knowledge, we can ignore or refuse knowledge, and in that way we will make ignorance out of ourselves. And the references are to the Ace of Pentacles and Marian Man. So when it comes to the feminine myths, sometimes I have to go back to the guidebook and read about, let's say, some of the keywords related to these feminine myths, because I don't know all of them. But I have to say, the more I use it, the better I know and the more I remember. So in this case, Marian Man is number 6. So let's have a quick look at what it says here. Growth. Marian Man speaks, it's important to know that you won't always be the same. Each change will be part of your totality, because life is an eternal process of movement and discovery, where only you know what your essence really is. So this is really helpful, because this is telling me that I can try and avoid studying something new, getting to know something new, you know, with the Ace of Pentacles, bringing up a new project, for example. I can choose to ignore it, but sooner or later there will be part of me that will need that. We are always changing, we are always moving, and what we are today is not what will be in a year from now, or even just a month from now. So I need to be aware of that. And so I look at the bright side or the light side of the knowledge card, and this one says knowing. So we can choose when it comes to knowledge whether to ignore it or to embrace it, and obviously in this case we'll be knowing something. And the Hermit, this tells me that in order to know something, I first have to take a step away from society, and perhaps this is the year of the Hermit that has a really strong impact on me, because I understand and I feel it. It is a year in which there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. There's a lot of people coming to us and saying what you thought you knew is not so. And so it really requires for all of us that feel like we are in doubt of something that we always thought we knew, to take a step away, look down within ourselves and understand whether that is truly what we know or not. And if it isn't, then let's just be open to change our mind. But if it is, then we need to stand up for it. And so the Hermit is what tells me about knowledge. And when I look at the feminine myths for, I believe it's called Yaki, but it could be Yachi or Yasi. Apology for that. So it's number 49. So let's have a look at that. By the way, there are 50 cards in this deck, which is always really cool. So dreams. I am the moon goddess, I am the decipherer, I am here to guide you. Mysteries will be revealed in your dreams, casting a beautiful light on your unconscious. Don't fear the unknown. It is a part of you full of wisdom and novelty that is coming to the fore, which is really connected to the Hermit and knowing that or knowing the things that we are keeping our shadow side. not being scared of opening up and embracing them and bringing them back to light in order to be able to assess whether we need to keep them or release them if we do not need them anymore. And so this is a very strong and powerful way of reading and associating these decks. I don't necessarily flip the cards because honestly I believe that there's enough, when you have one, there's just enough for you to work a lot on it. But just to show you how beautiful these are together, I'm just gonna do like this. They really resonate a lot. And then again, as I was saying, yes, the tarot deck is not mass market, so it's an indie deck. But it is very affordable and it is incredibly beautiful. Also, the cardstock is just absolutely phenomenal. And the other two decks, the Oracle decks, are mass market. So if you want to check them out, the price is very convenient, very accessible. And you can do so much work. I mean, look at this spread. Isn't it just absolutely fantastic? Even from merely an aesthetic point of view, I really love it so much. It is so beautiful. And so these three decks, including also the tarot deck, they really stole my heart. I appreciate working with them. It makes me happy when I'm actually dedicating half an hour of my time during the day when I'm really busy. It makes me happy to think, okay, but now it's my treat, and I can dedicate some time to go and work with these decks. And that's one of the reasons why I strongly believe that what I embraced as an intention for this year to always work with all of the new decks that I acquire is something that will pay off sooner or later, because I really don't think that I would have had time to delve deeper into these decks had I not done that consciously. And if I hadn't, I would have definitely missed out on so much. Because let me tell you, these ones, they work really well together. Another tarot deck that if you don't have this one, for example, you may have the True Black Tarot by Arthur Wang and the Ephemera Tarot also by Arthur Wang. So those two decks, they work wonders with the Soul Mirror. So for example, instead of having the Solar Logos split in two, you can have the Ephemera here for the bright side and the True Black here for the dark side. So that's another way in which I would recommend using these decks. And as I said, they're absolutely gorgeous. I mean, really look at the art style, look at how the vibes really mesh together. It is a really beautiful feeling, let me tell you, to be here and looking at these decks. So really stole my heart. I highly recommend them, but as I said, the Feminine Myths is supposed to be either already available or it's probably going to be available soon for the rest of the world. It is now available in Australia, so you can always find it. And let me tell you, there is something to be said about the lack of keywords. So generally speaking, that would be a deal breaker for me, at least until last year, because I will admit that I was looking for the quickest way to enjoy a deck. Does that make sense? The laziest way to enjoy a deck. But now that I have had these intentions about, getting to know the decks on a deeper and forming a deeper connections with them, it actually makes sense that not all of the decks that I like have keywords, and they don't necessarily need keywords because I can still appreciate them, especially when I accept that I have to look at the guidebook, which is something that is weird because I always do. I always look at the guidebook. It's just that sometimes I don't remember everything that I read. That's all there is to it. There's another deck that I wanted to show you today. This is a deck that, if you watch my intro video about this deck, or my first impression or unboxing or whatever you want to call it, this is the Cries of the Souls Oracle, and by Isabel Surf, illustrated by Daphne Sabine, also published by Rockpool, also very recent. I probably have to apologize to the creator of this deck because I had a very weird reaction to this deck when I did the unboxing. I had absolutely no idea what this deck was about. For me, I just looked at the art style when I saw it first. I didn't read the guidebook when I saw it on the table and I decided to buy it. And so when I started looking at the cards, and then when I started reading the guidebook especially, and I remember I was filming this video, and there was something that was so overwhelming for me. The message on the guidebook was so overwhelming that I probably had a very weird reaction. And it is because this deck is incredibly powerful. It is a surprise because you have to admit that the art style is very minimalist, and honestly, when you see art style like this, you don't necessarily make the connection with a shadow deck, or at least I don't. Maybe I've been naive. Maybe I didn't make this connection because I wasn't necessarily focusing on the actual essence of the drawings, because if you look at the card like that, of course that's something that should remind me, should be evocative of a shadow work rather than a light work, obviously, but I just didn't at the moment, and so it really took me by surprise. But when you read the keyword and also the sentence on the card, and then you read the guidebook, it's just it creates a little bit of an obstacle for me to absorb the meaning. And so I really my first impression was to rehome the deck, because I did not think that there was this connection between the two. You know, I was looking at the cards, I was reading at the message and the keywords, and it was making sense, and then I was reading the guidebook and it made no sense at all. Everything that I was gathering as a message from the cards did not match the guidebook. And then I finally forced myself to really look into it, do some work with it, etc. And I have to say, now it makes sense, but it only, and that might just be me, please understand, I'm not saying that I may be completely misunderstanding the deck. So I'm not saying that it wouldn't work for you. You do you, of course. But this deck is incredibly powerful as a shadow deck for me because of that difference, because of the fact that the slightly positive message that I was gathering from the card does not match with the very powerful but rather dark message I'm getting from the guidebook. And it doesn't happen for all of the cards, but most of them. There's one here that I wanted to read out loud to you. So that's card number 2. It says self-sabotage. And on the card, you see the saying, I trust in renewal and in the steps I take towards the future. That to me is a very positive message. I trust in renewal. I believe that I can start again, right? And in the steps I take towards the future, I see a future. I take steps towards it. And then you look at the what is written in the guidebook, and it says, when I am present, you feel that the skills and resources you need to move forward has deserted you. So this is telling me that if I pull this card, it's almost as if I don't see a future, because all the resources that I want to use are not there any longer. So, and you want to return to your comfort zone. So it's not going ahead, it's going backward. You begin to think you are headed for failure, then you freeze and everything becomes uncertain. You are demotivated and irritated and feel as though it is too late to attempt what you would like to accomplish, so you might as well give up. So the introduction is really like a gut punch for me. It has the same intensity and produces the same amount of pain. Not that I've ever been punched in the gut, and I hope I never will. But I assume that that's the way in which I would feel. And then, you know, if you decide to keep on going, then you start feeling slightly better, because it says none of this is true. You only believe it because of me. So basically, if I pull the self-sabotage, now I understand the way the deck wants me to work with it. I pull this card. It is because I am finding myself in these circumstances, and because of self-sabotage, I believe that I have no future, that I've been deserted, and that demotivates me. Fine. And then it says, no, look, this is not true. It's just because you are under the influence of self-sabotage. And so you keep on reading. and then you go into supplement. I oppress you, but you are also reassured by my presence. You have taken every step at the last, and you're afraid because the final step opens the door to renewal and brings to life everything you have imagined. So this is telling me that I am self-sabotaging. I get that from the keyword, but it takes guts to admit that. And even once you admit it, it takes courage to read this, and because it resonates so much and it hits a little bit too close to home, then it feels like I don't want to do it, which is ironic because it's exactly what the card is telling me and what the guidebook is telling me. Then there's a warning, and if you're still here, let me read the warning. You will never truly get rid of me. Well, thanks. Thanks, I guess. Okay, because I manifest when you need to feel protected. But you can create a new relationship with me. Ask yourself why you feel afraid and need to feel secure. Look at how far you've come. Focus on the present and take that final step. Change and renewal are close, and I can be a positive warning telling you to respect your resources and boundaries and move forward at your own pace. Give me a new role to play. I can help you accomplish some truly beautiful things. And that's when you start breathing. It's just me, but this is so intense, and it's just that I love this deck for it. I don't know, am I being masochistic? I probably am. I don't know, and there is a sense of masochism in doing shadow work, let me tell you, because you really want to, it needs to be destroying in you to be that powerful, and in order for you to start building up again. And this deck does it for each and every card, and there's a few of them. So when I pull one card, that's enough for a week. I don't need to pull more cards out of this deck. I've already pulled a couple, and let me tell you, I find it incredibly potent, but at the same time, it just when we say in the tarot community, when talking about a deck, we say, oh, it's not for the faint of heart, but we kind of mean it, but it's definitely related, or let's say most of the time it will be related to the art style. In here, I honestly cannot say that for the art style, because it looks like, this art style doesn't scare me at all. And that's the reason why you can be taken by surprise, because when you just look at the art style and you need to imagine what the deck is like, you definitely don't feel how powerful it is. But then you open the guidebook and you read all of this. Wounded inner child, do you want me to scare you off for a lifetime by reading what this says? Seriously? Okay, my past is full of lessons that help me be who I am today. So far so good, right? Yeah, of course, our past is our experience, it shapes us, and then so on and so forth. Wisdom. I hold all your first emotional reactions, the foundation of your relationship patterns and your inner workings and thoughts. I feel as though I've been in pain forever. I come from your wounds, and I am the keeper of your deepest childhood hurts. I unbalance your emotional reactions and prevent you from trusting your creativity and focusing on the things that matter to you. I communicate feelings of vulnerability and being unarmed to you. You have the ability to set boundaries and accomplish what you want, but my pain makes you believe the opposite. I don't know, maybe I'm easier to, not scared, but I'm easier to access. It's easier for me to access the darker side of myself because I don't necessarily keep that closed locked, and I can open it and just confront myself with that. But I cannot be the only one that thinks that when you read something like that, it feels very doom and gloom. Please let me know in the comments below, and please understand that I love this deck. Now, this has stolen my heart in a completely different way than the other decks that I'm showing to you today, but it still is so powerful that I honestly, this is probably saving me thousands of dollars in psychotherapy. Let's put it this way, okay? And I'm not suggesting to stop your psychotherapy if you're doing therapy and acquire this deck. Absolutely not. But I'm saying in my case, when I do a lot of work with this, I don't need to go to a therapist because I've done everything that needed to be done. But this card is just really punching me in the gut. And I don't know, and when you get to this, you want to keep on reading because you don't want to stop feeling this way. You need to see that there's a happy ending somehow, even though there's never a 100% happy ending. It's always like a compromise. In any case, if you want to feel super duper challenged, buy this deck. Trust me, buy this deck. You will feel like someone is constantly calling you off and or out. Is it out? Calling out. Sorry, my prepositions are just terrible. In any case, this was the last deck that I wanted to show you today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I really want to show more the way in which I use my decks, together with showing you new decks, which is something that is part of my intention for this year. So I hope that you'll appreciate this. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Bye!